Hey traders, Ivan Delgado, full-time professional trader and also acting on behalf of Global Prime in this video as a market commentator. In this video, we're going to be looking at BTC against the US dollar tether. And let me ask you, do you actually find that technicals at times might be perhaps too short-sighted? Would you like to actually learn a different technique that can only reinforce certain biases that you are going to be adopting before taking trades? If that is the case, please watch this video because what I'm about to reveal would be really important. So here it goes. First of all, we're going to be touching on technicals, and then we're going to be, moving into the nitty-gritty, and that is the cyclicality of markets. That's really what I want to be hammering home today. So in my mind, through this weekly time frame in the BTC US dollar, there is no question that the technicals in Bitcoin have been damaged quite badly in this near-term time horizon. And this is obvious through a multitude of elements. So let me touch in each and every one of them. Firstly, the market reverted back down with violence during the month of May through these two candles, very elongated candles, compromising what had been up to that point a very constructive structure of higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, and eventually through the penetration of that line, we had a market that was compromising, as I said, the structure of higher highs along the way, and that's a big negative. Now, next, the sell-off resulted in a complete loss of the bullish energy in the markets, also known as momentum, something that I always try to emphasize as well, because it is going to be giving us this, it's going to help us to reduce the path of this resistance. And to make it worse, we had back-to-back weekly selling candles right here. And these candles had behind a lot of volume, increasing volume, as you can see through this bar and then the next bar. These volumes were way above the typical average that we are used to see. And there are, I guess these are the obvious negative for all to see in plain sight in terms of structural momentum and volume. And we're talking about a weekly time frame, which captures 7 days worth of activity in the crypto space. Now, on a positive note, the BTC US dollar chart found support by holding this line of defense that I had identified for a number of weeks, even in anticipation of this sell-off. Notice that this is a location around the 30,000 vicinity. It's been a location filled with heavy buy-side pressure, as one can tell and attest by the absorption that it was produced through this week right here. Now, this absorption, as I said, is visible through this week that we've seen printed on the weekly candle, and that allowed to have somehow a backstop for all this mass selling to eventually fade. Now, one can also refer back to this period that we had early in the year and notice how many times the market tried to trade below this red line and it failed up to 4 times in a row. So that's why it was such a big deal that we were respecting this line on the way down. Now, also notice that this level coincides with the psychological vicinity of the 30,000 or thereabouts right here. In this case, the line is about 32,000, but we went as low as 30,000. And guess what? This is going to be an area where big institutions and money that is waiting in the line to be stuffing positions in, this is where they're going to be very highly interested to get their ammunition and get more exposure into this market. Now, on top of that, we had this area as the 100% projection by first obviously identifying what had constituted a bracketed area, and by breaking we can make certain predictions as to what would be the next destination where market makers and other type of entities, like as I mentioned, the large institutions, are going to be looking to reaccumulate BTC. Okay, so that's not really all that I have to say on the positive side. Now, it gets in very interesting from here, and the reason being is because now we can start to add on top of this weekly analysis the cyclicality of Bitcoin. So let's incorporate this cycle analysis into the mix by decoding these most probable cycles based off time. Remember, it is going to help us to find out whether or not technicals might be converging with the short and long-term cycles. Okay, so as this picture exhibits, as this illustration exhibits here, we have an ideal cyclical environment for Bitcoin bulls. There are 3 lengthy periods identified with high amplitude. You can see that through the 203, the 60, and the 106 periods. We also have a pretty high Bartel 64, 61, and 78 that essentially can be translated into the accuracy rate. So essentially, in the past, when we've identified a period of 203 or 106, how accurate the market has been in turning around at the point that we were expecting the market to see that inflection point. So notice this 106 had a 78% accuracy rate, and also we had a pretty solid strength. I'm not going to get into the calculation details here. So from a macro perspective, it all predicts that we're going to have a turning point around this period of late May, early June, and it is going to be lasting till the very end of the year, if this cycle is any indication to go by. And remember that this is very much scientifically driven. We are not cherry picking these numbers, and you can see through this picture how Bitcoin is supposed to find time-based wise a bottom around this point of the year, and this is going to be a cyclical pattern that will keep moving to the upside all the way till the very end of the year. Okay, so let me go back now to these 3 periods that I've identified, because on top of that, what we can do is start to also look into the granular cycles in Bitcoin. And here we can identify 29 right here at the very bottom, 29 as the most pristine period to spot turning points in the market. So you see where I'm going here. I've identified first of all the composite cycle overlay, which is this magenta line, and that is actually calculated off these numbers that we've identified in these periods. And then on top of that, we can add the dominant cycle, which is going to be much more short-term, or more short-term oriented. And as you can see, there is currently still an open window of upside potential up until the 2nd week of June. Why am I saying that? Because the composite cycle overlay, which is going to be giving us the macro cycle, is pointing higher. And right here at the bottom, we can see that the dominant cycle of 29 periods is still in a uptrend. And this is going to be the case, and it's going to be true until around the 12th or the 13th of June this year. So that's why we still have pretty good conditions for Bitcoin to find buyers on weakness, and that is why I have been very much interested in getting my exposure on the Bitcoin market to the upside consistently ever since we reached that 30,000, because I believe that the market is likely to on-ramp further buying interest for the next 10 days or so, in line with both the short and the long-term cycles. Beyond this window of time, around the 2nd week of June, I would suspect that if the technicals are not looking more promising than they do now, this might actually lead to a renewed period of sell-side pressure, because we will be entering the next period of 29 days where Bitcoin tends to actually see the downward movements. Okay, and you can really see that this 29 period tends to be very accurate in the peaking bottoms and tops in Bitcoin, and not to mention this cycle overlay in the magenta line, which has been really pristine. There was definitely a divergence around this top, and notice that eventually it indicated that the time was not prime, was not ripe for the market to keep moving higher. But again, this is not something that is going to be subjective. This is not something that is up for debate. It is something that through the calculations of the cycle scanner we can understand. Look, there are certain amplitudes that have been achieved through a specific number of periods, and that gives us a Bartel or accuracy rate of 64, 61, and 78 respectively. So this is something that we want to be accounting when trading the BTC US dollar market. And remember, as a viewer of this video, you might be asking yourself, how can I possibly, or how can this possibly help me to make better trading decisions? And all I gotta say is, it's all about, it boils down to timing your entries. It definitely serves me very well to calibrate my bias and knowing and finding out when is the best period to long Bitcoin. And as this video has tried to describe, I start my thesis by modeling this scientifically driven data provided by the cycle scanner, and from there I look to form an opinion based off both the short-term and the long-term dominant cycles. And as this video is showing you, this is resulting in, being able to project and better predict behavior into the future. And obviously the icing on the cake, of course, is to then combine this cyclicality in the markets with technicals as the ultimate signal. In the case of Bitcoin, I'm actually, as I said, I've been looking to buy dips with a pretty high degree of conviction in the last few weeks, ever since we reached the 30,000 bottom, and I'm gonna still continuously be interested in engaging in the same type of behavior for the next 10 days or so, until that cyclicality is no longer in my favor. And the one thing left is that upon inspection of the technicals in whatever time frame is preferable for you, and if that aligns in those lower time frames, then you look to take the trade in the direction of these cyclical movements. Okay, now as a final note, let me show you the daily, because here the point that I want to make is that I believe that it is going to be a tough climb from here. I am not predicting in any way, shape, or form that just because we have both cycles in alignment, it is going to be an easy path, an easy climb on the way up. And the reason being is that just look at this chart, the sheer amount of work that needs to be done to penetrate each and every of the hurdles that have been created on the way down. We have the 13 daily moving average. We got this one, and a fair share of selections you can make of technical resistances that are going to get in the way of making consistent gains in the market. I really believe that the market is going to be chopping around perhaps for a month or 2 months. It's anyone's guess, and there is going to be constant sell side pressure once we come into interaction with each of these levels of resistance. I think that it is going to be a slow grind, one that will hopefully be characterized by bullish pressure still dominating proceedings. But I just wanted to make the point that the daily chart definitely looks like there's a lot of work to be done. And yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to finalize this video with. Hopefully you've gained tons of value. If you are interested in the cycle scanner, the software that I'm using to calculate cycle rhythms in any market aside from BTC, you can be thinking about any other crypto coin or traditional asset, please reach out to me. You can find me in the Discord room at Global Prime. The link is down below. I have my private mentor room as well. So there you have it. If you are interested, you know where you can come, knock at my door, and I'll be happy to make myself at your disposal at the right time to give you further insights into this fascinating line of study, which is cycles, and how that can then marry with technicals. Until the next video is bye from me. Cheers.